I live in a place where basements get damp for long stretches. Laundry takes forever to dry, and that subtle mildew smell loves to sneak in after a rainy week. This is a home dehumidifier meant for medium to large spaces, and it hits that sweet spot for people who want a simple, reliable way to keep moisture under control without babysitting it every few hours. If you have a basement, a laundry area, a big bedroom, or a main floor that gets clammy, this kind of machine makes a bigger difference than a scented candle ever could. The design is more thoughtful than flashy, and that is exactly what I want for an appliance like this. The body is white with rounded corners, so it does not look industrial or out of place next to furniture. There is a small digital panel on top that is easy to see from a standing height. The unit is compact, about 21 inches tall, around 13 inches wide, and a little over 10 inches deep, so it is easy to tuck it in a corner or next to the washer without blocking anything. The wheels underneath roll smoothly on tile and on low carpet, and the handle on top has a soft, grippy feel that is more comfortable than it looks. I move it between the laundry space and the bottom of the stairs, and I can do it with one hand even when the tank is part full. What makes the design useful every day is the light bar that shows humidity at a glance. Blue means the room is under 50%. Green is the comfortable middle zone. Red means things are getting damp, and it is time to pull moisture out of the air. I rolled my eyes at this kind of thing before, but I ended up checking that light more than the numbers. At night, I do not want bright lights across the room, so the sleep mode dims the panel and the light bar fades. It is not a flashlight in the corner. It just quietly does its job. Setup is exactly the kind of simple I appreciate. I wheeled it into the basement, plugged it in, set a target humidity, and it was working in a couple of minutes. There are two ways to deal with the water. The built-in tank pulls out easily, but it holds just under a gallon. That is fine for light days, but my basement can get swampy, so I switched to the included drain hose for continuous draining. If you go with the hose, give it a proper downward slope, and you will not need to think about emptying. For heavily humid areas, that is the only way to go unless you want to be dumping water constantly. Actual use is where this unit won me over. I set my target at 50%, which is the level that keeps the air feeling normal and stops that musty edge without drying out skin or sinuses. The automatic control is simple. When humidity climbs, the unit wakes up, pulls things back down to the target, and then shuts itself off until it is needed again. That cycling is gentle. It does not blast on and off. The fan has 2 speeds. Even at the higher setting, the sound is more like a low background hum than a roar. On low, it blends into the room and disappears. In sleep mode, it is even quieter and the lights go dark. I have left it running for days at a time and it just behaves. Performance matters more than numbers on a box. Over the first 2 days with the tank, I was emptying it more often than I wanted, which told me 2 things. My basement was worse than I thought, and the unit was pulling moisture steadily. Switching to the hose changed everything. I checked the humidity level a handful of times with a separate meter out of curiosity, and the reading stayed within a couple of points of my target. The air lost that heavy feel, cardboard boxes stayed crisp, and even the concrete floor felt less clammy. On laundry days, I used the dry mode and hung shirts on a rack nearby. The dehumidifier ran a little harder and trimmed a bunch of time off drying compared to leaving everything to the room air. It is not a clothes dryer, but it helps a lot when the weather outside is wet and stagnant. If you have ever dealt with a dehumidifier that freezes up in a cool basement, you know how annoying and risky that can be. This one has automatic defrost, and I have not had any icing issues, even when the space dropped into the low 50s Fahrenheit. It also has overload protection, which is not something you feel in day-to-day use, but it is the kind of safety net I like in appliances that might run for long stretches. The automatic shut-off when the tank is full works as expected. I tested it before switching to the hose, and it shut down immediately with a clear indicator on the screen. There is a memory feature after power outages. The power went out here for a few hours during a storm. The unit picked up where it left off once the lights came back on. There is also a child lock that disables the buttons. That saved me from accidental taps when a curious niece started poking around. Maintenance is straightforward and it genuinely matters. There is a washable filter that pops out from the top. I rinse it under warm water every couple of weeks. That keeps dust down and airflow steady, and it stops that stale, dusty smell that can hang around older units. When the filter is clean, the fan breathes easier and the compressor does not have to work as hard. Between the washable filter and the way the unit cycles, I have not noticed any scary spikes on the power bill. It is still an appliance that runs, but it is not a budget killer. There are a few things I wish were different. The construction uses a lot of plastic. It feels sturdy enough for everyday moving around, but I would not want to drop it on a hard floor or kick it going down steps. The included drain hose and the power cord are on the short side. In a big basement, you might need a longer hose or a different route to a drain. I ended up shifting the unit a few feet to give the hose a clean path downward, and that solved it. The water tank is small for heavy use, which is why the hose is almost mandatory for damp spaces. None of these are deal breakers, but they are good to know before you start planning where it will live. For day-to-day use, the digital panel is clean with quick responses. Tap the target humidity, choose a fan speed, and walk away. The light bar gives instant feedback without forcing me to stare at numbers. The unit covers up to about 2,500 square feet, but in my experience, placement matters. If you are trying to manage a whole level, keep doors open and place it near the center or near the worst moisture source. For a single large room or a basement with a drain nearby, park it there, hook up the hose, and let it cycle. It is powerful enough to manage a full level if your home layout is open, but like any dehumidifier, it works best when air can move. One specific use case that sold me was the laundry routine. I hung damp towels and shirts on a rack in the same room, set the unit to the dry mode, and came back a couple of hours later. The fabric felt noticeably drier, and there was none of that lingering damp smell. Same story after a wet spell when the floor felt sticky. After an evening of running on high and then cycling on and off through the night, the basement felt neutral the next day. Not dry in a desert way, just comfortable. There are small quality of life touches worth calling out. The sleep mode darkens everything and trims the sound. The continuous drain option turns this from a chore into a set it and forget it tool. The child lock keeps settings from getting bumped. The automatic restart after an outage means you do not have to remember to check on it. And that simple humidity light bar is a surprisingly helpful cue. I got to the point where I could glance at the color as I walked by and know what was happening. This is not a showpiece. It is an appliance that is meant to solve a problem quietly and consistently, and that is exactly how it behaves. If you have a damp basement, a laundry space that lingers wet, or a big bedroom that gets sticky, this KNKA unit is easy to live with. If you are the kind of person who wants a quiet tool that just runs, keeps humidity in check, and asks very little in return, it fits that role. If you need a huge tank or want premium materials, you will notice the plastic and the smaller reservoir. Pair it with the hose, give it a good spot to drain, and it becomes a hassle-free part of the house. I have used dehumidifiers that were noisy, fussy, and awkward to move. This one has stayed in the background, kept the air comfortable, and required almost nothing from me beyond a filter rinse and a quick placement tweak. That is the kind of experience I want from something that is going to run most days in the background. Check the comments of this video for a link to see the current pricing of the KNKA At 25 Dehumidifier 34 pints. Thank you for watching.